Welcome once again to my channel. I have several videos posted. Feel free to read about my bio in the introduction. Now for this presentation. This presentation is entitled Key Ingredients for Organizational Excellence, and it was originally presented at the ASQ seminar in April of 2015. Over the next 2 years, it was presented several times at the ASQ sections. There was one in Kitchener and another one in Hamilton, and also I did it as a workshop for another section. So different variations and summaries and some modifications from the original were made. The original was presented in a 75-minute session, and it had some interactive content with the audience, such as questions and polling for responses. As I look at it now, it has been 5 years, and I've attempted to tailor it for this channel, still keeping the original slides, but considerably shortening it. The discussion will explore what organizational excellence is, what aspects need to be considered, as well as what is required and how can we use the basic tools that are available, as well as concepts to achieve this. Of course, it is my personal take on this subject. On this slide, I've depicted the three witches. The three witches are brewing and making a magic potion, and they are making this magic potion with the necessary ingredients. These ingredients will be mixed and brewed, and then we can give it to companies so they can achieve organizational excellence. Yes, we give that magic potion. This presentation is based on experiential learning and established methodologies that are out there. I'm using everything that is available that you can find in books. You can find them on different YouTube channels. You can find them online content. And so I would like to give a disclaimer and acknowledgements. Throughout the presentation, I've taken little clips, little cartoons, little pictures that I found that were not copyrighted around the web, and I am not claiming these as my own. Also, the sources of the concepts and ideas that I have come from established methodologies, established literature that is out there. All I'm doing is trying to filter this and create something that I have found, what I think is organizational excellence, something that I have used that worked. This picture here is depicting the caveman, which is myself, with over 20 years of experience, and it can be compared to the evolution of humans through learning. That's how I see myself in continuous learning. I'm sharing my take on things here, which even over the past 5 years have significantly evolved with the changing times as well. Anthropologists have shown that sharing knowledge is what kept Homo sapiens as a species the dominant humanoid over others. So today, I am sharing this from my personal academic and experiences in the workforce. Organizational excellence. You will see that I'm using a Z here, even though I'm in Canada where we use an S. I want you to reflect. What do you think it means? Why do we need it? Is mediocrity good enough? After all, we cannot all be excellent. Is organizational excellence, is it a destination or is it a journey? And is there a cost associated with it? And if so, does the benefit or value of having excellence outweighs it? In the live presentation that I gave, I polled the audience and I asked them to give me what they think are some of the ingredients of organizational excellence. And this is what I took from the flip chart. Let's look again at the response. What do we really need to do to achieve those items that are on this list? If we look closely, it is mostly people related, or it depends on the interaction of the people within the organization. What jumps at us is the degree that leadership plays on setting the tone. Look at all the reds. Leaders have to provide and set the tone and demonstrate that these could be done by engaging with the entire company. When I was doing this presentation, I decided that I should get back to fundamentals and look at the definition of the words, take them apart, and see what exactly it's telling us. So the first one, what is an organization? An organization, as defined by the dictionary, says it's an organized group of people with a particular purpose. So notice, it's an organized group with a particular purpose, and it could be a business, government, nonprofit. The word is organized. What does organized means? It means it's arranged in a systematic way, especially on a large scale. So if we put this together, we can say that an organization is really a group of people that are arranged in some sort of systematic way for a particular purpose. So the three words that jump at us is people, systematic, and particular purpose. Let's look at excellence. Excellence is the quality of being outstanding or extremely good. So if we put the two together, we can safely say it's about people within our system being extremely good or outstanding at achieving their particular purpose. So if you continue, we need to focus on people, both the leaders and the followers. So leaders have to give that purpose, and we also need to look at system. We need to create a system with processes within that system that has interactions that would allow the people, the leaders and the followers, to be outstanding in achieving their particular purpose. The point here is that we forget about people and we focus on processes to deliver value. We use tools to improve processes and we forget of the impact of people, which is the main ingredient to organizational excellence. So here's a little cartoon taken from McGraw-Hill, February 2014, and we all know about the old story, the story that we learned when we were in kindergarten about the blind man and the elephant. Organizational excellence is no different. It has been approached from different angles, different models, and everyone has their own particular take. So only when you have worked for a number of years and you start to look at the organizational excellence models, you realize that you can be able to use tools, you can be able to understand how to drive excellence. You need to look at the big picture. Here are some models that are out there, and there are lots, but I just would choose to give a brief overview. I'm not going to go into details, just some key concepts. And you can readily get available information on several books that have been written on the topics, as well from good deep dive internet search. So some of these models for organizational excellence out there, it's like the Balanced Scorecard, the Learning Organization by Peter Senge, Malcolm Baldrige Award, Edward Deming's Profound Knowledge, ISO 9001 2015, I have here the 2008 at that time. 5 Pillars, Domains of Excellence by Dr. Carl Albrecht. Versions of lean enterprise systems such as TPS, and again, many, many more. Okay, so here are the first 3 models. 7 Domains of Excellence, Dr. Carl Albrecht. He talks about strategic focus, customer value, leadership and team performance, culture, value and ethics, process excellence, talent management, and knowledge management. Then we have the balanced scorecard, which was introduced by Kaplan and Norton, and they talk about the alignment of the vision, mission, and strategy into a comprehensive set of performance measures. And basically, the balanced scorecard is a system that translates an organization's mission and strategy into a comprehensive set of performance measures that provides a framework for strategic measurement and management system. So if you have done the balanced scorecard, you will see that they talk about 4 buckets, and they have different models. They have customer intimacy model, and they also have the organizational excellence model, as they call it. And those, they divide it into 4 discrete areas: the financial, the customer, internal processes, learning, and growth. And from these, what they do is you create your strategy map, you define your KPIs, you find your measuring system, and you take it from there. If you look at these, if you look at the three areas, the next one is Malcolm Baldrige. Malcolm Baldrige talks about leadership, information and analysis, strategy, customers, process management, human resources, and results. For all of these 3, we're seeing leadership, people, and processes. The next 3 models, it's the ISO 9001. The ISO 9001 is based on 7 quality management principles. That's the 2015 version. The previous one was based on 8, but they have put it together, and they have now come up with the 7 quality management principles. And in an organization, you need to understand your customer focus, leadership, engagement of people, the system approach, process approach, improvement, evidence-based decision making, and relationship management. The next one is Dr. Harrington's 5 Pillars. And I had the opportunity of meeting Dr. Harrington when I attended the ISO Summit in Japan in 2018 in October. And he is in his 80s, in a wheelchair, but he has an amazing amount of energy. And when I spoke to him, he was now writing another book. And it really gives you a good sense of excitement when you listen to these organizational excellence gurus. So he spoke about the 5 pillars of organizational excellence. And in his house, as you look at it, at the top of it is the value to all stakeholders. And to get value, you need to have performance excellence. And these 5 pillars are processes, projects, change, knowledge, and resources. So you need to be able to manage your processes, your project management, change management, knowledge management, and resource management. And the foundation for all of this has to come from the structured, innovative management. Dr. Harrington was an integral part of writing the innovation management system at the international level, for which I was part of the work group as well. The next one is Deming's profound knowledge. We've all heard about Edward Deming, the father of, or the grandfather of the quality. And he puts together systems thinking, variation, the theory of knowledge, and psychology. This is his 4 spatial model. What he's talking about is the appreciation of a system when he talks about systems thinking. You need to understand how a system works. Variation, reduction of variation is what drives quality and improvement. The theory of knowledge, you must have knowledge, and the psychology, and he has embodied these in his 14 laws. And now, the last 2 I want to just talk about briefly is the learning organization concept by Peter Senge in his 5th discipline. You can read his book. And he talks about 5 learning disciplines. And it's basically at the center, you've got your systems thinking, personal mastery, mental models, building a shared vision, team learning. And the objective is to learn and to be continuously learning and apply the tools. So if you see on the outer, it's innovation and improvement through continuous learning. The next one is the lean management system, or the house of lean. This is taken from the TPS. It is not my concept. And in the Toyota production system, or TPS, is right at the top there. And the goal is to achieve the highest quality, lowest cost, in the shortest lead time. You've got your just-in-time and your Jidoka. And I'm not going to go into detail. Those are your processes, your input to your output. And at the base of it, you are doing the Hijunka, standardized work, and Kaizen, which is continuous improvement. And at the bottom of it, to keep everything together, is stability of the workforce. Their quest is a lean journey. How could we get to true north? So you will see organizations are using one model or the other. And my point here is, let us look and put them all together and look at what is coming out of these models. If we were to filter these, we will see some points that are coming out. Things like leadership, systems thinking, measures, knowledge management, people, development, empowerment, engagement, personal development, change management, communication, team building, project management, processes, how to manage your processes to deliver value and to get the results that you need. So here is my take on things summarized. You have leadership that is driving systems thinking with people integrated, and processes that will allow people within that system that is being engaged by leadership to achieve organizational excellence. When we look at those processes, we have those focus areas within the processes: communication, team building, project management, personal development, change management, value, and results. And here is my model for organizational excellence. Many of us feel like this if we're given the leadership positions. However, most of us, if we aspire to leadership or we are in leadership position, we rise to the occasion. So what is leadership about? Leadership is about a strategic focus. What is a vision? A vision is where are we headed? We need to be future focused. What is the mission? What is the mission? The mission is, what business are we in? And what does strategy look like? How is the vision and the mission aligned to the 4 areas? And I'm using the balanced scorecard approach because I found that for understanding vision, mission, and strategy, which drives key performance indicators as well as your objectives, is a very good model for strategic mapping. Leaders have to have transparency, authenticity, accountability, respect. They need to be able to enumerate how to achieve that vision. And they also need to provide the support and resources so that the mission is fulfilled, which will then lead to the achievement of the vision. They need to establish the framework, the norms within the organization, the policies within the organization, and they need to create that environment, such as a learning organization, one that has a culture that can evolve to achieve excellence, one that engages employees. So over the next few slides, I'm just going to break down some of these concepts. We talk about leadership. I spoke a bit about strategic focus, so I'm not going to go into it. What this is, you can choose any one of your strategic mapping. Some people interchange mission and vision. Whatever you do, you need to do strategy at a high level. This is what leadership does. It is the strategic focus. Where are we headed? That is future focus. Mission is, What are we involved in? What is the business we're involved in? And how can I align my vision and my mission, communicate that throughout my organization? So they have to be able to find the purpose of the organization. These have become buzzwords: authenticity, accountability, respect. As they say, talk is cheap. They need to walk the talk. And how do we achieve this? Leaders can achieve this by modeling consistent behaviors, have honest and open communication. They need to hold themselves and others accountable. They need to ensure adequate resources and a budget is provided to achieve the objectives. It should not be the flavor of the month. And they always have to have some sort of reward and recognition system within the organization. This is very important for leadership. You will see a consistency throughout the presentation. After I talk about what, I try to suggest ways on how this can be done. So let's look at the tool. One of the tools we can use is the PESTLE analysis. And what this is looking at your political, economic, social, technological, legal environment. And if you relate this to context of the organization in the ISO 9001 standard, the 2015 standard, what we're talking about in context of the organization is we need to scan that environment and understand what is the environment within which we are operating. The reason for this is you need to be agile. You need to be able to respond to change. Leaders need to continually scan to ensure their vision is still relevant. There's a lot of talk about, vision is something that is constant. Vision can also be dynamic. That is my thought, my take on things. For example, we see things are changing rapidly, circumstances, environment is changing. The vision of the company could also be changed. Once you've done your PESTLE analysis, you've done your outward context of your organization, you look at the opportunities. When you get those opportunities, you then switch it over to your SWOT analysis. And so you will leverage your strength, your weaknesses, opportunities against those, as well as whatever threats that you have. Some of the things that you try to do is when you look at a PESTLE analysis, you can flip a threat as an opportunity. For example, if in one of the countries they had banned the use of plastic bags, and there was a large manufacturer of plastic bags within that country. Now, when they looked at their SWOT analysis, they could no longer be producing plastic bags. However, what they did, they leveraged their strength, and one of the strengths that they had was they had a good supply source of plastics. They were already in the distribution, they are already be in procurement, they knew how to do the logistics of everything, even in selling. So what they did, they switched over in making plastic totes, which are reusable containers, and not only they stayed local, but they started to look at it internationally, and they became a success story as well. So that is how, when you scan your environment, you look and you do strategic thinking, you do some strategic intelligence management, you can actually identify threats, which can be flipped into opportunities. Bring them into your SWOT analysis and drive objectives and be able to capitalize on it. So this is a version that I like to use, sometimes referred to as an extended SWOT. And what it does, it allows you to see your strategic thrust and, as I mentioned in the previous style, where they intersect. So you've got your opportunities, where they intersect with strengths, you capitalize. Where you have a weakness, you build up that weakness. If you have a threat, you invest because you have your strength. And in a weakness, you limit your exposure of weaknesses and threats. So doing this sort of analysis is a very helpful tool. Creating your strategy map. I'm just going to show an example from the balanced scorecard. You have your vision, your mission, you've got your 4 buckets, your financial, customer, internal processes, learning and growth, and in the center of it, you have your strategy. Learning and growth, you start there because that's the base. How to manage the growth and meet the ongoing demands. which are the key processes to focus on. How to control costs, eliminate waste, and not operate at a loss. How do we create value for customers? So this is basically some of the questions you need to ask. And once you start to ask those questions, you can then do your entire strategy map, align it with a vision and a mission, and you'll be able to achieve your customer satisfaction, which is part of your organizational excellence. I like this cartoon because it sort of captures the essence of systems thinking. And there's no explanation here that I need to give. It's sort of like the butterfly effect. As you change anything within any system, the impact is felt to the entire system, and it might end up harming you. And I have the little inset cartoon there by Randy Glisbergen. He's saying that, wow, this system is taking me around in circles, and I was only taught to think outside the box. I'm not trained for circles. So what it is, the organization is an entire system, kind of like the human body. It's a collection of interrelated, independent processes within it, and these processes are interrelated, so they work together. And what you're doing is transforming inputs to the system into outputs, and those outputs have to be in the pursuit of some goal, in which case this is going to be your vision of the organization, where you're headed. And one thing to note, there is interdependency. There are a lot of systems thinkers out there. I'll just take two of them. There's Akoff, and for him to explain what systems thinking is, he used a very good example. He says it's not the hand that writes, it's you that write. It is not the hand that is doing the writing, but it's you as a person that is doing the writing. And it is very profound if you think of it, because if you cut the hand off, the hand would no longer be able to write. There's also Eli Goldratt, who his books have been sold millions and millions of copies, The Theory of Constraints, and he's talking about when you want to manage a system, you do not manage the individual parts, but you manage the interaction of the parts within the system. This prevents silo mentality. Many companies today have found, when they do the root cause analysis, even one of the big major automakers, when they had a problem, what they found was that the entire organization was thinking in terms of silos. There was no matrix going across horizontally, and a lot of information was lost, and they end up having major recalls. What happens when you have the silo mentality and you don't look at systems thinking? It's people are fighting for resources among departments, and they're fighting it within the organization. And you will see that if one department is achieving 100%, it is subjugating another department within the system, because it's outperforming one aspect of the system, and you cannot outperform one aspect of the system. The entire system has to work as a whole. So when you're preparing budgets, you need to prepare this with this in mind. Performance measures also need to be established with this in mind. So again, if one of them is doing at 120%, one department is a star, they're doing the best, and the entire company is doing at 6 to 7%, then are you really operating as a system? The other thing to think of when we look at systems thinking, if we take a more holistic view of greening and electric vehicles, we're not getting rid of fossil fuels. All we're doing is moving things from distributed environmental pollution by little cars running around all over, and we're now going to increase fossil fuel usage in order to get the band of electricity that we need. Also, the mining of the batteries that are required, the mining is not clean. The mining is what we call dirty mining. The other thing too, if you were thinking about biofuel, what they found with biofuel is that the conversion in terms of the ratio was great. And as a result of that, they had to replace crops that were meant for food in order to do the biofuel. So in a system, you have to consider the entire interaction within the system. I've chosen the tool of Theory of Constraints that was demonstrated in the book called The Goal, and it is by Eli Goldratt. I'm just going to talk about this. This is a very good tool to use when you're looking at systems. So every system has a goal and a set of necessary conditions that must be satisfied to achieve that goal. So the sum of the local optima or the local efficiencies does not produce the system optimum, or at best, system-wide success. So the linkages that you see are important, and if not more so, those links. So a system's most serious problems occur at the interfaces between the components, not necessarily within the components themselves. So very few variables limit the performance of a system at any given time, and refer to these as constraints. So these critical limiting variables that are within the organization, they become constraints. And there's a valid cause and effect relationships between any effect on the organization. So when you look at it, the reason why it goes in a cycle, it is because when you make the weakest link of that strong, you have just created another weak link. So you identify the constraint, you manage the constraint, you evaluate the performance of that constraint, and then you repeat the process over and over again. This is a very high overview of theory constraints. The study of theory constraints and the application takes a lot of discipline and takes a lot of time. But what I found is very useful as a precursor of identifying projects, identifying your bottlenecks. Then you can use things like Lean Six Sigma. You can also use Kaizen for improvement, or any one of the tools that would foster improvement. But it allows you to focus on where those constraints are. Let us now look at the other aspect, people, development, empowerment, and engagement. This is not exact. You know, it depends on various parts of the world. Some places are lagging by decades. This is more of a global trend. And it's funny, as I look at this slide, things have also shifted over the last 5 years. But we have in the workplace today some baby boomers, not the majority anymore. We have those from the Gen X, the Gen Y, and also millennials, which were post 1994, and these are now they're 25 years old. So we have in the workforce a range from 18 years old to 75. So that is the workforce, regardless of whether it's in manufacturing, service, distribution, and those are some of the areas that I worked in. We see the same sort of thing happening. We see that the demands, the needs of each one of these generations are totally different. And it is because of that we need to understand how people within the organization work, and it's no one size fit all. For example, if you say we had a good month and we want to celebrate this, and you say let us go after Friday and do something, what would that something be to baby boomers? What would it be to Gen X, Gen Y, millennials? Each one of them would have a different way of wanting to spend that time. The millennials, for example, they are the wired generation. They think totally different. The Gen X would still want to have a lot of group parties, and the baby boomers, they were the ones who are very loyal to the company. So we see it different. If you are a leader or a manager, how do you handle these different groups within the workplace and still please them? So that's the huge challenge that you get, because you have from the traditionalists, as they call it, the boomers, the Gen Xers, who are the mediators, and then you have now the new media that they're so high-tech, tech-savvy. So every one of your needs are different. How to develop and engage employees. You can either focus on weaknesses or you can focus on strength. If you focus on weakness, then you define the performance by legislating the required skills or competency. An area of opportunity is in fact just a euphemism for an area of weakness. And this is felt by the employee. The employee actually feels as though it's an attack on their self-esteem and their self-worth, especially if they cannot bridge that weakness. And this creates a kind of a culture of fear of job loss or promotion, because if I can't do this, then I will lose my job. It is like saying you need this skill or competencies to do a particular job, so go and get trained. When we focus on strength, we are looking at legislating required skills outcomes. So we can ask ourselves, what are we trying to achieve? How can we achieve this? And you have your discussion with the employee. You say, how can we achieve this? How can you contribute with your existing skill? You focus on how their performance is achieving the results and what are the gaps in the outcomes. So you say, okay, here is what your skill level is, and this is what you can achieve, and what are the gaps? And so now it's a more positive experience, as they feel that you have been recognizing their contribution, and they might be more willing to share and contribute. So what are the results with this approach to employees? Employees start to feel ownership of their work, they manage the outcomes, and they're more eager to be creative. We also see that they produce a higher quality of work, and they become empowered to solve problems and make decisions. And they end up continuously improving processes and service because now they're engaged and empowered. One other thing you can actually do is to track the engagement levels. The level of engagement people have to their job, career, or profession, the level of engagement they have to the organization. You can do this by a survey, and it has to be an anonymous survey. If it's done by a third party, this is also better. And you can ask questions on how satisfied they are with their current job and the organization as an employer. You can try to determine how committed they are to making the job and organization successful, how proud they are of the organization and the work they do, and how willing they are to positively talk about their job and the organization. If one thing to note here is that if employees are engaged only to their job or profession, then they will not be aligned to the organizational goals or strategy. So if you're an engineer and or you're a continuous improvement professional, what you're looking at, you're engaged to that. But the challenge here is, how do you get that individual to align to the organizational goals and strategy? If employees, on the other hand, are engaged to the organization but not to their job, they will be aligned to the organizational goals. So yes, they're aligned to your goals, but they will find it difficult to do their jobs well and to deliver that extra discretionary effort in the work that they do. So these are some of the things that you need to measure and understand. It's not just about engagement. You need to be competent, or you need to have competent, engaged employees. Two words: efficiency and effectiveness. What is efficiency? What is effectiveness? So if we look at my little diagram, when we talk about efficiency, we're talking about how well we're converting those inputs within the process, how well we're converting those M's, as we call it, the man, machine, material, money, resources. Those are all the M's. How well we're using the environment within the process so that we can be efficient. And when we look at from the input to the output, we are now measuring effectiveness. Are we achieving the desired results? So whatever we're putting in and whatever our process is converting across it, are we achieving customer satisfaction, or are we getting organizational excellence, achieving organizational excellence as we desire? And there are 4 paradigms of this. You can do wrong things wrong, which would be theoretically you're inefficient and you're ineffective. You can do the wrong things right, which means you are 100% efficient but not effective. You can do right things wrong, which is inefficient and you have some throughput but very low effectiveness. And the paradigm you want to get into is right things right, where you'll be efficient and effective. Now, That's just in theory the sort of paradigms you can look at. But we have to remember that efficiency and effectiveness are not mutually exclusive. They are in fact interrelated and interdependent on each other. So you cannot really be 100% efficient and 0% effective. How many times do we see this in companies? Especially now, as people are retiring and the knowledge within the organization is not being passed on. Knowledge management. What is knowledge management? It is a process of creating value from intellectual capital, which is humans, and sharing that knowledge with employees, managers, suppliers, customers, and all those who need it. It's developing and supporting a learning organization, being able to manage your core competencies. We need to look at what is called a data, information, knowledge, wisdom paradigm. Data is just pure numbers. Information is gleaned from data. Because for like example, if you look at your credit card, it's just pure data. But if you take those numbers, it becomes information, i.e. that information then becomes knowledge. Now I know something about you based on running it in a database. And wisdom is one of the stages that you get to. When you get to wisdom, it means that you have performed synthesis and analysis and you can make decisions because you understand what my needs are, i.e. you can target advertising to me as in the credit card example. So there are basically there's two types of knowledge that you have. You have the tacit knowledge, which is not recorded. It's part of the entire organization. It is ingrained within the organization. And the challenge here is how can you capture that knowledge that's within the organization before those leave the organization or they're no longer available? How do you capture that and convert it into explicit knowledge that becomes explicit or knowledge that is easily transferable? So wisdom is derived from collective databases of knowledge. It's built from experience, values, and expert insight. Wisdom provides the capability to exploit the use of knowledge for informed decision making. So we need to get that tacit knowledge that is within the organization, apart from the explicit knowledge, the manuals and all the explicit knowledge that exists, so that we can be able to have long-term success. And the key to the long-term success of any organization is the ability to differentiate itself from customers. For knowledge management, I like Peter Senge's fifth discipline, and I encourage you to go read it. Basically what it is, he's talking about living in a continual learning mode. And as an organization, we need to live in a continual learning mode. It is different from team building. It is team learning. It is meeting the synergistic stage of thinking together in a high-performance team. Yes, this cartoon is taken from another source, and it's very apt when we think about change management. We're just happy being where we are. For change management, I like to use Becker's equation. D times V times F, it must be greater than R, where R represents resistance to change. So this mathematical model talks about dissatisfaction being the D. You have to be dissatisfied with the status quo, what is happening right now. And if you're going to be a change agent, if you cannot see dissatisfaction, then you need to create it. And politicians do this, but I'm not going down that platform. What you need to do is, what is the burning platform? Many years ago, this came out of the concept of, if you're on a burning platform in an oil rig in the middle of the ocean and it begins to burn, what would you do? you'll have to jump. So this is how you have to have the dissatisfaction with the status quo. You have to ensure that people are ready to jump. A vision. You need to create that vision if you want people to change. You need to focus on the outcomes, the positive possibility. You have to focus more on the absence of pain in the present situation. And then the first steps, F. You need to take those first steps. You need to listen, you need to plan, you need to celebrate the wins. And now, if you multiply D times V times F, if the vision is 0, or the F is 0, or dissatisfaction is 0, and you're just working on V and F, then if you multiply it, it becomes 0, and you will be unable to change anything. So there is leading change, and there is managing change. When you're leading change, you need to be able to have agility and monitor the response that you're getting and communicate. It's based on confidence and trust. The leader is not a travel agent. You know, you don't send people to places they have never been before. Instead, you have to be like Napoleon, you know, those pictures that you see. The leader has to march ahead, clears the path, and communicate that vision, and make sure those behind him know where they're headed. So if you want to be a change agent, you need to be able to create change. You need to work on that dissatisfaction with the status quo, or there will be no change. Here is a visual, a bell curve, and self-explanatory, moving from the change initiator all the way to the skeptic. In organizations, whenever you start to do a change, you're going to have maybe 10 to 15%, or now they say 10 to 20% of the people may jump on that bandwagon right away. They're the ones who are excited and they want to change. You have absolutely nothing to worry about. They will come along and change. And then you've got the extreme, which is the laggard. What happens is that you have the people in the middle who are undecided, and they could shift either towards those that are willing to take the risk, or they can shift down to the laggards. Unfortunately, what happened is that we end up spending a lot of time and a lot of energies on the laggards. The more time you spend on those laggards, the more time and the more we are empowering them. And as we empower them, the general population in the center tends to shift and move towards the laggards. So what we need to do is to focus on the change initiator, those that are willing, who have started to change, and the early adopters, so that they can pull the rest into the change. One of the things that always happens is there are going to be some die-hard laggards, and those will eventually leave the organization. And change keeps coming. Here is a nice cartoon about the march of progress. And one thing to note here, it's not so much about things that are change, it's the rate of change. If you look at the time it took for the wheel to the train and the time it is taken from today's innovation, the rate of change is what is impacting. So there are two aspects of communication. We could do as the cartoon suggests, or we could create and develop effective communication. Here are some communication strategies that you can use. And there's open, there's inclusive, two-way, results-driven, and multi-channel. It all leads to communicating effectively. In an open style communication, all members feel free to share feedback, and there's a high degree of trust that is developed. In inclusive communication, we are involving employees in decisions that affect their day-to-day work. So for example, you may ask them to write their own work instructions, and then you would like to help them in executing that, and also giving positive feedback so that it can be improved. A two-way communication is vertical and lateral. It also deals with the topic of ideation. How do we generate ideas? Conversations in both formal and informal setting. This also is very effective when we talk about two-way communication, because two-way communication across the organization really kills that rumor machine. Then there's results-driven results-driven communication. Results-driven communication is when we have established all our measures and we're focused on achieving measurable results through the interaction, and we're going to serve as ambassadors outside of the organization. And the other one is the multi-channel. And what we want to do is maintain consistency in message across different media. So in an organization, if you're going to do newsletters, you're going to do town halls, you're going to have a kiosk, you're going to have monitors that are disseminating information, you need to make sure that there is a consistency, there is a rhyme and rhythm in which you are driving your information out in those channels. Team building. This is perhaps one of the biggest cliches. It's everything about team player, the best team competition. And then we have all the acronyms. We put the TEAM, and we say, for example, together we achieve more, and create all kinds of slogans. And we attend lots of training and workshops and presentations, and we are drilling team building into people just to get them to work together. We have all been there. I have my little cartoon there from Mark Anderson, and he's saying, hey, wait a minute, there are 3 I's in team building exercise, just saying. I think the fundamental, back to basic things that we learned some time ago about teams is still relevant. And I use this every time I think about a team. And there are 4 stages: the forming, the norming, storming, norming, and performing. So when you're forming, in that stage, we need to make sure, if you're facilitating the team building, that you set clear objectives. Then the team moves to the next stage, where trust needs to be developed. You need to resolve conflicts. At this stage, when you're storming, you also need to start thinking about the different personalities, the different multidisciplinary teams that you're creating, what it is you need on that team. And you can use some personality testing, like DISC or DISC as they call it, or Myers-Briggs, or any out of the available personality tests that you have out there. These are very effective in being able to understand, because one set of people can work in a team for one set of objectives, but they would totally not work together on another exercise. Then norming. We need to be able to work together. We have to start building recognition. We need to do team building events. We need to have that sort of comfort level. And the last stage, of course, is when they perform, when they feel free to delegate tasks among each other. They celebrate their successes. They understand really it's not about them, it's about the entire group as a whole. If you are doing team building, I would suggest that you carefully select and teams for specific purposes, whether it's across the organization, whether it's a permanent team like an APQP team or a new product development team, or whether they're ad hoc teams. You need to always take those into consideration and in these 4 stages. And you need to be able to move those strategies through the stages from forming to performing. In some cases, you may even have to remove members in order for it to be effective. I've had the fortunate opportunities to work on many times on high performance teams, and it certainly is a joy to be on. There's such a high level of trust. It is like playing a game. You pass the ball from each other, and you know somebody's got your back, even in front of a customer. And it's really, it's a really worthwhile experience. I've also, on the other hand, work on teams that are totally toxic as well. Project management and deadlines. Time to cut loose. I have this model. I'm not going to go into detail of the model. You can look at it. It's visual up here. You can pause the video and read each one of the little boxes I have. It's pretty much based on the PDCA cycle. And you know, the previous slide you saw there, the cartoon, the challenge is your milestones and your timeline and making sure that the project gets done on time. So you're moving from stages of initiation all the way to close out. I use a traditional methodology here. It's a scope, time, quality, scope, time, cost in the triangle, where if the scope of the project, if it's not defined properly and you get scope creep, then time and cost will increase because it's an equilateral triangle. If you delay things and you're not meeting, then the cost of the project increases so that it can balance out the triangle as well. Quality and risk is now also in the middle. Since I gave this presentation, over the last 5 years, I have adopted a more flexible methodology, having been exposed to Agile. I now incorporate a mix of Agile and Waterfall, with quality and risk being the center focus. But you need in an organization to have a good project management approach. Everyone weighs in about measures, and measurement has become very important. Some organizations have thousands of KPIs and KRAs, but they're all conflicting. From Edward Deming, who says measurement is in fact a demotivation. It's wrong to suppose that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And we also have Duran saying, without a standard, there's no logical basis for making a decision or taking an action. And if you measure the wrong things, you'll probably get the wrong behaviors. People will just pencil whip, or people will just make sure that they meet those KPIs, but there's no value that you can get. And then there's not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted really counts. What gets measured gets managed, from Peter Drucker, the late Peter Drucker. Measures. This is what I would suggest with measures, the way to look at it. There are high-level measures, and then there are measures for finite measurement of processes. And you should be able to set, based on the alignment of your vision and your mission, you should be able to set meaningful objectives. You need to determine the important business priorities, and you need to convey meaning to the entire organization, both at the small level and at the global level. So for example, you can look at OEE, and OEE is a company-wide measurement that is easily understandable, or easily understood rather, in manufacturing. You can look at the OEE and you know exactly how well your organization is performing. You can look at on-time delivery, or OTD, and you can get a measure of your customer satisfaction. And then at the different levels, you can look at things like scrap, you can look at rework. You can also look globally at quality costs. So those are just some suggestions. Whatever measures you're doing, based on those objectives that you've set, and you're measuring those key performance indicators, then you need to make it visual. You need to make sure that it's easy to understand. You do not complicate charts. You make it very, very easy so that people can, one glance at it, get the meaning of how well you're doing. You know, if you're setting your meaningful objectives, just use a simple tool. Just use SMART. You don't need to do some sort of SMART and SMART P, and just do it. Just think of it. Think of what it is you need when you're setting an objective. An objective has to be something specific, what you hope to do. It has to be measurable. And that M is how you're going to measure when you do your measure. So you need to say, okay, here's my specific objective. Here is how I'm going to measure it. It also should be achievable. You're not going to set something that is way out. I know there is also a thing called a BHAG, but you don't want to do that unless the organization is really innovative and is really energetic. But you do something that's achievable, and you also look at it. It has to be realistic, and then it has to be time-based. So it has to be within a specific time. This story you probably heard over and over again. I'm not going to go into too in depth. But when we look at organizational excellence, it is common knowledge, so I'm not talking about anything that people do not know. But I want to look at Kodak and Fuji Film operating in the same environment. And we talk about operational excellence, how to stay current. So why did Kodak go out of business? Was it just because of technology? Is it a digital era? And the changes, you see, the thing is, in 1975, a Kodak engineer by the name of Steve Sassoon, he actually invented the digital camera. And as Sassoon desperately wandered around the company trying to convince his senior executives of the potential of his discovery, he was met with the mindset of a company who was always in love with the present. They just kept saying, no, what are you thinking of? No photographer, no professional photographer will want to use digital cameras. Fujifilms, on the other hand, they were facing exactly the same predicament as Kodak. But yet they managed to survive and thrive in the same business climate that drove Kodak to ruin. So why? Well, you can read up on this. There were a combination of factors. And some of the things that it points to was leadership, the vision. They lost touch with the customer, and they were actually resisting change and want their customer to stay where they were. This resistance to change did not work for them. So Fujifilms, on the other hand, they went for early adoption. They looked at it and they saw it as a future, and they were flexible enough in their vision to change their business model. And they also did innovation and did thinking, and they started to introduce a lot of the first digital cameras in the marketplace. So now I come full circle. We started out with the three witches, brewing that magic potion. Well, organizational excellence, there's no magic potion. As we saw from the example with Fuji, and there are many other examples out there, it's about leadership. And leadership must maintain profitability as an outcome. However, they need to balance the growth and they need to ensure employee engagement. Excellence is a journey. It's a continuous fluid state. It is not a destination. And this is coined very nicely by Tom Peters, where he says that excellent firms don't believe in excellence. All they believe in is constant improvement and constant change. So what is organizational excellence? It's about people within a system being extremely good or outstanding, achieving their particular purpose. The people comes first. You need both leadership and you need the team members as well. And they all have to work within that system. And the leaders need to set that vision, which is the purpose of the organization, and support it. Processes, and you need to look at all the tools, all the simple things that we know, and incorporate them in your organization so that you can achieve organizational excellence. And my last thought, Henry Ford. Henry Ford was very focused on processes, and he was the one who pioneered mass production. He had the greatest impact of the 20th century because he utilized Frederick Taylor's scientific management theory, which in fact was the first version of lean, and there was a lot of time studies. However, even Henry Ford recognized the role people played and the emphasis that must be placed on that aspect. So the final takeaway on this, Henry Ford, you can take away my factories, burn up my buildings, but give me my people and I'll build the business right back up again. Because he knew that people were the most important cog in the wheel. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening to this presentation. I hope that it has been beneficial or will serve some purpose. Please subscribe to my channel so that way you can see any more videos that I will post from presentations that I gave throughout my career, and I welcome feedback as well. Thank you.